Today we have a great presentation put together for you. It's around governance, governing the self-service. Co-presented by Kevin Taylor, who is the Principal Solution Consultant from Tableau. And me, Mark Wu, I'm the host and your favorite speaker. Without any further ado, let's get started. Kevin, please.
Mark, did you want, I'm sorry, I was expecting you to talk this slide, so happy to jump in here, sorry. So Mark, thank you for the opportunity here to speak here today. The wheel that you're looking at, the govern self-service wheel, if you're looking for kind of how we're going to parse this out, I'm going to be hitting a lot of the data and the content side, a lot of the out-of-the-box part of the platform. And then Mark's going to take it to the next level, showing how you can govern the structure and the platform itself to do some amazing things and to scale to your enterprise. So first off, I do want to say good afternoon to everybody on the East Coast with me. Good morning to everybody out West. Shiny stars for anybody outside of the US. I'm sure this is outside of your working hours. If anybody's multitasking or couldn't hear Mark, my name is Kevin Taylor. I'm a Principal Solutions Engineer at Tableau. I've been in this role for just shy of 5 years, but my Tableau journey, I like to say, started long before my employment. Just like most of the folks in the room, I was a customer of Tableau's for 7 years at companies like Cisco and NetApp. NetApp's where I met my long lost brother here, Mark Wu. Funny story about that. We didn't actually meet at NetApp. We met the eve of TC15 at the MGM Grand at a speaker party. And this was 2 days before we presented together for the first time. So it was an incredibly wild ride. That was an incredibly wild party. We went to some other wild parties, but that all happened in Vegas. So it's going to stay there. Now, outside of work, if you want to know a little bit about me, my family is my world. So that's why I didn't put any kind of like professional bullets here. My greatest accomplishments, my family, my beautiful wife, Catherine, my twin girls, Casey Lee and Kennedy, they are twins. You're going to have to take my word on it. Now, typically after I show my family picture, my presentations tend to go downhill from there. But bad jokes aside, I'm going to show the agenda here in a moment that I'm going to talk about. But one of the things I've seen in 20 plus years in the BI and analytics space is that the companies that are most successful with their goals to become data driven, and that's pretty much most companies today. There might be a few exceptions out there. I don't like to say every company, but the ones that are successful with becoming data driven are the ones that can strike a balance. And the balance is between control and enablement, or control and empowerment. It's between governance and self-service, or we like to call it Fort Knox in the Wild Wild West. And my goal today is to show you how the Tableau Analytics platform can help strike that balance. So over about the next 20 minutes or so before I hand it back to Mark, I'm going to talk about some of those out-of-the-box capabilities that Tableau platform offers to help you deploy what we call a true self-service analytics environment. And I'll talk about what we even mean when we say that, true self-service analytics. We'll talk about how you can leverage some of the governance features as well to manage the responsible use of data, as well as to customize access to all the data assets that you're publishing and that you're storing and you're spending all this money to kind of wrangle and put together. How do you expose that? The goal of all this is to help you think about ways that you could scale analytics to more decision makers, and that word, the key word there being scaled. So I'm assuming we have a really wide, diverse audience today in terms of Tableau expertise. There's probably many on the call that could teach this topic to me, probably better than I could. There's others as well that are just getting started. Maybe this is your first VTUG, so welcome to you all. But between Mark's content and my own, I think you're going to find there'll be something applicable, something new for everyone. So let's get started here. Talking about governance, the word governance itself, it has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people, certainly to different organizations. For IT, many of the people in the audience today, the admins, right? Governance and related security policies, they help you reduce risk, and they also help us sleep better at night. But for business users, governance can be perceived as an obstacle, and curious people, especially like analysts, they like to overcome obstacles, and that's when silos start getting created. It's really hard to scale that way. It's certainly hard to govern that way. Now, because governance isn't a single feature that you just enable or disable, we want to encourage you to think about it more broadly. So when I talk about governance, I'm talking about a combination of controls, roles, and those repeatable processes that can help create trust and confidence in your data and the analytics. And it's that trust that you need for people to actually use that data. So governance is going to encompass all those users. They're going to understand and follow some established data and content processes that you create, maybe a BI team, maybe an IT team, the ones you create and customize for your Tableau deployment. So what is this going to mean for the organization? I'm going to start with a question in true analyst fashion. It is a bit of a rhetorical one. If I'm in front of an audience here, I would normally ask for a show of hands. And the question is, does everyone in your organization have secure access to data that they can trust? And if you put your hand up, it's kind of like you're opening yourself up to come up to the stage, because it's something that it's really hard to achieve. It's a bit of a unicorn, but there's ways to get close to it. And more likely what's going on is there's questionable data that keeps your users, that keeps your decision makers from asking the right questions to drive the real business value. And you're not alone in that at all. We've all been through asking questions like, how do we find the right data? Where do we find the right data? If we find the right data, can it be trusted? Is it relevant? Is it up to date, right? Is it all these things that we need it to be to make a critical decision off of it? And then from security and compliance perspective, who has access to what data? Who should, that shouldn't, and just as important, who shouldn't, that should. But perhaps the most important principle when we're talking about this, when we're talking about adopting modern analytics, is that self-service and governance are not odds. It's not, do we want to control or do we want to empower? The two should work together to help enable everyone to be able to ask questions. We're going to bring this to life here as I go through the next few slides. But to help you be successful with this, it's not all just features and functions. It's not just platform capabilities. At Tableau, we've compiled a methodology that you can follow as you do try to deploy Tableau across more organizations. Many of you on the call are probably already engaged to some degree with what we call the Tableau Blueprint. But for anybody that's hearing about this for the first time, I'm just going to share a quick visual. It's a subway map, in my opinion. What we've done here is essentially gone out, curated, organized a ton of Tableau best practices. We've sought the expertise of you all from thousands of our customers. And then we take that, we turn that into what we consider repeatable processes that can become core capabilities to help you become more data driven. Now, behind every one of these subway stations or every step in this journey, you're going to have prescriptive and proven and repeatable guidance that you can follow. And what's great about this blueprint, in my opinion, is that while you can zoom out and see the bigger picture that we're looking at here, maybe you see where we have technology gaps, maybe where we have personnel gaps, you can also zoom in on specific areas and then help fine tune and improve them. So just like an analytics cycle, I wouldn't consider it linear. We have it's like surveys, some questionnaires, some ways to kind of tease out where are your strengths versus where are those gaps, so we can help you address those gaps. And I promise the only time I'll do it on this call, my only plug for you to reach out to your account team. If you're not yet engaged in the blueprint and it's of interest, reach out to your Tableau account team to get you started. If you have like a customer success manager, they're going to be critical for that. If not, we've got some other ways to help you there. Now, as you see at the top here, governance it extends and evolves throughout the entire journey. And it all starts with how Tableau helps you deploy what we call a true self-service analytics environment in a governed way. And when we say true self-service analytics, we're not talking about the old centralized approach. And I'll show this in a screen here in a moment. But we're not talking about that old centralized approach where an IT team or a BI team creates all of the reports and dashboards, and then decision makers self-serve from those dashboards, right? That's not true self-service. Instead, what we're talking about is a combination of those same dashboards and reports. They still exist, and there still should be a core team that can create some of the more important ones. But we're also talking about the ability to ask and answer questions that don't get answered by those reports and dashboards. And I spent probably about the first 10 or 12 years of my career in IT, and we had some really cool technology, but unfortunately we didn't have any crystal balls. So when we create a dashboard, if it answers 80% of the questions, I'd consider that a grand slam. So the question then becomes, when it doesn't answer the question that your decision maker needs to answer, do they need to get in line and ask somebody from IT or BI to ask that question and answer it for them? Or are they empowered to use trusted data, ask themselves that question and move on at the speed of the business? That's the true self-service we're talking about. Now, how does Tableau actually help deliver that true self-service to scale across your entire organization? That all starts with flexibility, more so than any other platform out there. And likely one of the main reasons you chose Tableau, assuming you're a Tableau customer. Tableau provides choice and flexibility, whether you're deploying server in the cloud or you want to put it on-prem. Maybe you want Tableau Online. That's our fully hosted SaaS solution. A lot of companies are going that direction now as they want their applications managed, right? Do you want to connect live? Do you want to bring it into memory? What single sign-on authentication do you want to use? The flexibility with that, what that does for us is it allows you to fit things into your existing infrastructure and into your existing business rather than dictating. Like, we don't want to build your business around the application. You want to do that vice versa. And this not only allows you to leverage your technology investments, get more ROI out of that, but also leverage those security investments and your data access policies. So as your environments change, and I'm certain they will, right? You're going to move to different data platforms. You'll have new applications that serve up more data. You'll move to the cloud, right? All those different things. As that happens, having this flexibility, you know, the platform's going to help you scale, so you can move forward with that comfort. So we're going to get a little bit into the features and functions, but before we do that, two models. I talked about the traditional model earlier. The traditional model is what we're showing on the left, the centralized model. I'll talk about it here in a second, versus the modern self-service. And it's really not versus, the two coexist. But I think we're getting to a point in the evolution of data and BI where most people are going to agree that while it has its merits, the traditional waterfall there on the left, it can't quite keep up with the speed of data that we see today, right? In that traditional workflow on the left, there was an IT BI professional. I was that person for a while. We'd gather requirements, we'd go to the business, we'd analyze the data, we'd prepare some reports. There was a lot of back and forth. And then we would ultimately serve up some content to our end users in this waterfall approach where there's dev, test, QA. And that certainly has its merits. I think there's still reporting in most organizations that still requires this, things like audits. But for the everyday insight demand, it doesn't quite keep up. So enter the modern analytics workflow on the right. This is where you're empowering your end users to ask and answer their own questions with data through published data sources, enabling them also to share insight with their team, maybe with the rest of the organization, but having a process there that ensures that the data supporting the decisions is accurate and can be trusted. And to bring that to life, I usually have some animation around this slide, but the access and view, I'm going to start there at the top. I'm just going to role play for a second. Let's say I'm Bobby, I'm a salesperson. It's Monday morning. I've got my fresh hot coffee. And in my inbox, I've got a subscription, right? And it tells me my pipeline that what I need to hit for the quarter. I can access and view that, right? I open it up, I can interact with it. Maybe I select some filters, I drill down in, I can tell by product, what do I need to sell? But wouldn't it be nice to look at this on a map? Unfortunately, whoever designed this dashboard didn't put a map in there, but I know there's geodata. And I have web edit capabilities as an explorer. So I open it up in web edit, a little drag and drop, and now I'm looking at a map and I can see where in my territory should I focus. I think this is really creative. So I move over to the share spot here. And instead of putting this right out in production, it hasn't been vetted or blessed or certified. I want to publish it up to a sandbox. That way I can look at it with my team. The team thinks it's great. My manager thinks it's the bee's knees. We want to promote it into production. So it goes through the process to make sure that it's connected to certified data, the calculations, the joins are all correct. And of course, the visual best practices have been adhered to. At that point, it can go into a production. And in my experience, having worked through the traditional workflow on the left, that waterfall, that process right there would take days, if not weeks, if not months, if not quarters, if not longer. Whereas with the modern analytic workflow, we're sharing with our team within minutes or hours, and then to promote it into production, depending on the process, that shouldn't take more than a day or so, potentially a week, maybe longer, depending on your process and your resources. So I would wager most customers, most of the folks aren't, we're not fully self-service. I don't think anybody can, I don't know if it'll ever be all fully self-service. There's always going to be that, those audit reports, those pay reports, things like that require a deeper process. But there's a process, and I assure you that Tableau can help you get there. But let's take a look at JPMC really quick. I want to talk about their successful journey, and then we're going to jump into some of those features and functions. So if anybody's not familiar with JPMC, excuse me, I need a sip of water. JPMC is one of the largest U.S. banks, global financial services company. And of course, data is absolutely vital to their business operations and their strategy. Helps them do things like reduce risk. That's critical to banks, enhance the customer experience. It also helps shape their future strategy through intelligence. Now, they made that shift. It's been a while now. I remember this started back in 2011, but they were IT owned analytics, and they moved to business owned self-service to help keep up with the rapid changing industry that was financial services. But as you can imagine, with a highly regulated environment like FinServ, leadership first needed to establish some enterprise governance that balanced the data access, right? They couldn't just give out data to everybody and go, all right, we got 40,000 or 30,000 curious people, right? They had to balance it with regulatory compliance, but they were able to do so. They were championed by a hybrid center of excellence or center of enablement. So both IT and the business working together. And then IT was the enabler, having maintaining the servers and doing all that. So they were able to expand from 400 Tableau servers to over 30,000 today, and that's still growing. There's a lot more on our customer solutions page about JP Morgan, some of the marketing, as well as some other organizations. And if anybody's on from JP Morgan today, we really appreciate you sharing these kinds of stories. So let's get into now really quick some of the different ways that you can customize the environment. Every company's unique, right? We're all snowflakes. The flexibility of Tableau helps there. But some of the things that you can do to help govern, it starts out at a very high level with your site licenses, the site roles. So you can assign some default permissions to match users to their skill levels. The creators being the power users, they're the ones that they're going to model your data, potentially using prep, using relationships. They publish those data sources so other creators and explorers can then create content off of it or explore that data. They're going to have access to all the products, whether that's prep, whether that's server or online or desktop. Now, probably a larger percentage of the overall base, you'll want to be explorers. These are the more curious people in the organization. They want to be informed about the business. If you're in a totally centralized model today, these are the people that are driving you nuts. These are the people that have an email to you every day. They want a different view. They want a different color. They want to ask it a different way. They want a different filter, right? These are the people that need to be explorers. They're going to be empowered to create content off of published data sources. So they won't be able to connect to new data sources. So that's one great way to govern it, but also allow that empowerment. They're going to be able to interact with views that they have permissions to and be able to edit those potentially. And then they can still ask those questions, right? They're not going to have to get in line to ask somebody else to ask those questions for them. And then finally, viewers, your more casual consumers, they get the answers they need typically through just filtering and drilling, maybe a subscription, and they're on their way. And this is one group we tend to see customers overestimate when they do their initial rollout, and then they find out that, oh, my people are way more curious. They need Explorer licenses. So we've seen that play out over the last couple of years since we introduced the RBO. Now, beyond the inherent governance you get in the role-based licenses, we get more granular, of course, with permissions. So whether you're an admin or a content owner, being able to use these templates or create fully customized settings. And we're doing some improvements here to bring more role capabilities. But you can control what folks can do, what users and groups can do with workbooks and data sources and prep flows. And I think Mark's written about this before, but we very much encourage you to permission at the group level and not the individual level. That's going to save you a lot of sleep and headaches as well. Now, if we bring these all together, you've got the site role, the license levels, the permissions, the rules, the content ownership, those inherent rights that come with that. So you can start to layer on and create some pretty unique different ways of governing and accessing data. So you've got both governance and empowerment there. Now, beyond these access controls, Tableau also offers different ways to help manage the responsible use of data, starting with end-to-end data management, whether you're cleaning and curating your data using Tableau Prep, Maybe you're just starting out with desktop and relationships and connecting some of the modeling you've done on the back end. Your users can start to author and create their own models here. Then they can take those, and of course they can publish and certify those so that people downstream, the consumers and the authors, know they're working with trusted data. All of this curated data, of course, need to be made available or served up in a way that those authors and those consumers there can access it in a way that we like to call easily discoverable. So whether you're using projects or sites, you can organize content in a way that is relevant to the business, to your business. So what I'm showing here is a very, 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 very simplified model. It's just one fairly common hierarchy where we see different departments would be a top level project. And then within each departmental project, you've got nested production and sandbox environments. And there's usually a couple other layers here as well. But this helps just making sure you at least have these two delineations between production and sandbox. That's going to help people delineate between what should I trust versus what is just out there. And then using the permissions we had on the previous slide, of course, decision makers are going to be blinded from what's in sandbox, hopefully. You keep that sandbox for a team, but you don't want your decision makers out there having to make that decision. You want them to quickly be able to access, okay, what I can see is trusted, and that's the paradigm you want to set there. Now, we're not going to dive too deep into them, but we do offer sites as well, multiple sites as a way to isolate and organize your users and your content. Many enterprise customers, though, are doing it with single site. Almost all of our Tableau Online customers are doing it with a single site. And there's certainly merits to both approaches. At the end of the day, it comes down to how do you want to, what do your policies look like? What do your processes look like? So again, it comes down to that flexibility. But aside from the big one, multi-tenancy is a big reason for sites. And when I say multi-tenancy, I'm talking about external facing stuff. Like you need to separate Coke from Pepsi so they can't see anything, Ford from Chevy, whatever your competitors are, or your customers and their competitors are, excuse me. But the biggest advantage outside of that I see is being able to delegate responsibilities. So we have server admins, site admins, and project leaders. And you really want your server admins focused on performance and upgrades, things of that sort. Let your site admins handle more of the operational daily tasks. And then if you're in a single site, you would do that through project leaders. In my opinion, full transparency, we owe the project leader role a little bit more capability, or maybe a new one called project admin. There is an idea out in the forums called new role project admin. If you agree with me, just saying. If you're not familiar with the ideas forums, this is a great place where you can tell Tableau exactly what you want to see in the product and or vote up other people's ideas. And our devs definitely do look at it. So one last slide here, one last story. We're going to hand it over to Mark. He's going to show you some really unique ways to govern and manage your servers. But I wanted to show kind of what this governance workflow, really high picture. This is what I've been leading up to. So you start out with your authors, your content owners. They create some data sources and some dashboards. They need to get validated, certified, and promoted so that other users know they're working with trusted data. Because Tableau is a secured, governed platform and you have these processes, users can then consume and explore and trust content, moving from viewing and interacting to being able to actually analyze and discover new insights. Over time, those responsibilities of creating new data sources and content get delegated down to these business users, allowing them to better scale, allowing them to do ad hoc type of questioning, and overcoming that supply and demand problem the centralized model presents. So now I'm just going to share one quick story. It's an absolutely huge one, but Honeywell is one of those companies that's been really successful in striking that balance. In less than 2 years, they had over 20,000 users of Tableau, but they use it as a way to actually reduce governance risk. So their VP of Analytics and Transformation, she was on stage with Adam Selipsky, our CEO, at the TC19, I believe. And she shared how they reshaped their business with Tableau. And she said, our Tableau deployment went viral. In less than 2 years, we had 20,000 users. And the reason for the success was being able to strike that right balance between empowering the business, enabling better visibility, and instilling trust and governance in the data. So I want to leave it at that one. While Mark's going to talk, I want to say thank you to you all, but of course to Mark. Mark does so much. There's a reason he's a Zen master. He does so much for the community. I'm still a big part of the community. This VTUG is phenomenal. The monthly cadence is unheard of. So thank you to all of Mark. I started with a family picture. I end with a family picture. I apologize for it being blurry, but that was my surprise for you, Mark. I've talked and rambled enough. It's all you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin.
And I'll stop sharing here.
All right. Desktop 2. I'm sharing my desktop 2. Hold on a second. Thank you for Kevin. Kevin mainly covered the data and the content around the governance. I'm going to dive into the server platform governance and also how will you set up your governance structure if you don't have one yet. Dive onto server side. We all know that it's very hard to manage a self-service platform because the publishers are entitled to do almost everything, anything without asking server admins. They can publish data sources. They can choose any schedules they want. They can give permissions to any users group they want. They have tons of flexibilities. But as a server admin, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of controls. So how we can stay control when we are able to enable the self-service to a few hundreds publishers, the server still stay healthy so we can scale. So IT will not get blamed all the time, but start to enable lead self-service. There are a couple of bigger challenges we all know as server admins. One is extracts delays. You are familiar with this picture where the rushing hour, long extracts delays. We talked about a couple of times in this forum where how you can manage the server extracts delays. Most recent talk, I summarize as 6 things can be done. Thanks for Tableau that makes some of those features are features. I used to start with those automatically suspend, refresh inactive workbooks 2-3 years back. I had to write my Python scripts, but now is a feature. You can just use it. Similarly, you can also tag the still content. Tag means just tag. Last time I presented, I will show you the web recording you can find. After tagging those still content, you can actually move them all into a special project where you can delete them. Number 3 is a configuration. It's really simple. Reduce timeout default. By default, I think 2 hours. As a minimum, never give more than 2 hours timeout for your extracts. I know that you'll be pushed to give 4 hours even. There are some VIP extracts, takes a long time to finish. As a server admin, you need to put a stick in the ground. See, my server, 2 hours. Beyond that, timeout. As a publisher, as whatever team leader managers, you have to figure out how do you prepare your data better? How do you do a better join, more efficient join to make the extracts finish within 2 hours? Number 4 is also a feature. In the link later, I'll show you where you can find actually the scripts being used in production to give more capacity for your backgrounders during the daytime and give less, sorry, other way around, give more capacity during the evening and give less during the daytime. Number 5 trick, and of course, probably some of you are doing this already, that is set a very few VIP extracts higher priority manually. If you care, there is API you can call to automate the process. It means that after republish a new revision of the same data source or same workbook, the priority can stay. Okay. Basically, is a REST API, just update the priority to whatever number, like 20, every single day. Okay. Number 6, that is a usage-based abstract schedule. This is not a feature available yet, but it can be achieved by using more, I call it more advanced API. Basically, think publishers are free to choose any schedules they want. Most people choose daily schedule, refresh, but their workbook over time actually not being used as often as what they think. So what I do, this is something that I've been doing for the last 3 years, very effective. For people who have a daily schedule, if their workbook never being used for the last 3 days, I will change them automatically to daily, sorry. For people choose an hourly schedule, if the workbook never being used for the last 3 days, I will change them to daily schedule. Daily schedule, if the workbook not being used for 2 to 3 weeks, they don't need a daily schedule, I change them to weekly schedule. And weekly can become monthly, 2 months, no use. I will stop the extracts. And of course, you can tag them, delete them as archiving. Number 6 is a little complex, but it's achievable, very effective. Those few things will help with your extracts on time. Render time is another thing. Server sometimes behaves like this, unfortunately. How do we deal with that? Well, there are a couple of ways can help you to make your server a much more efficient to render the dashboards. At least 5 things here. Number 1, set the cache as very long. On my server, I think I set 24 hours. I did a lot of testing. I tried 2, 4, 8, 12. Only when it comes to 12 hours or longer cache works better for my server. You need to figure out how long your server should be. I would recommend 24 hours cache warm-up with the cache warm-up option selected, of course. Number 2 tip is to reduce the viz session timeout from default 30 minutes to 3 minutes. 30 minutes is way too long. This is end-to-end timeout for any single click on the server. More than 3 minutes, they got timeout. So we can make sure that there's no one single click will consume too much CPU memory of my server. Number 3 is also for memory, it's only for memory. You can set process memory percentage, a specific memory threshold. When it comes to this threshold you set, the processor itself will get restart. By default, if you don't do anything, it restarts at somewhere about 90 or 95%. You say, what's wrong with that? Right? The problem is that the default restarting happens too late. When you see the spinning wheel for a lot of users, that is what happened. It's recommended you set it about 60% of your system memory, which means recycle the special process more often, but avoid the spinning wheel. Very effective. Number 4 only applies for the hyper-process memory, especially if you have a more larger deployment where you have hyper as dedicated node. The node has nothing, but only has a hyper process. This is where the step 4 applies only. When you have that, it's called HOSS, HOSS configuration. You will also need to set, you can also set hyper-D about 70% of system memory to recycle it, which also means you need to have a 2 host node. The tip number 3, number 4, somehow Tableau did not document, but it worked very well. Number 5 is set hyper. Again, it's for hyper. It's a hyper session memory. It's unlike number 3, number 4 is a whole process memory. Number 5 is a session memory. It's very similar with number 2. Number 2 is end-to-end time. End-to-end means enclose hyperquery, enclose the viz render, layout, everything. But number 5 is only the hyperquery. By default, there's no memory setting, but you can configure it. I recommend it to 5 to 10 gig. That is my safety net. So where you can find this detailed information, I had 2 presentations. You can find a presentation link. It's the only link. The URL is very hard to remember, but there is a link from enterprisetableau.com. I have a link. When you click the link, server admin talk link, you will find I have a detailed slides, presentations, recordings for September and November. Talk about these 2 things only. Okay, September was focusing on extracts. November last month's talk was focusing on the render time details. If you implement most of those 2 things on your server, you should be in a good place for the server platform governance. Now, a lot of those have to do with set controls, set policies. So how do you get agreement from your business teams, from your publisher groups, from your management about which policy, what threshold you should set? Okay, this is a very good question. How do you avoid the escalations when you time out people's dashboard, when you time out people's extracts? So how do you make sure you can protect yourself, you don't get yourself killed, you can still implement those controls? This is where it comes to the governance process. Hopefully you can set it up. If you don't have this governance structure, you will have a hard time try to implement some of the server-side governance. Okay. This governance structure in the Tableau's blueprint, there are a couple of ways to go, but for me, the most effective way is bottom-up. Means to have a Tableau governance body. You call the governance council, committee, whatever. Okay. This body consists of multiple business functions that hopefully the Tableau Jedis. You may not need a big title people in the group, but those people who really understand Tableau. Those people who are the go-to people when their executives had questions around Tableau. Those people have a passion on Tableau. Together with the IT, this is a governance body. Kevin and I, we met because we are part of, back a few years ago, a NetApp Tableau governance body. I was on the IT side and Kevin is on the business side. For my governance body, I normally have somewhere around 10 to 15 people. I don't have a lot, but those people together, you can consider they are the representative of the very large Tableau desktop community in your company. Those people are empowered to make decisions around server, platform, process, best practice, timeout, everything. If you have not had this yet, okay, had this governance body yet, so how to get started? 3 steps I lay out for you. Number 1 is find a Tableau champion. Either your management will hire a new champion, or identify one person as the champion in your company. I have been the champion, lucky champion for the last few years. And then this champion will help put together in the middle the Tableau governance body. Together, driving the governance policy. And as I call it, is a PDCA process. It's not a one-time deal, unfortunately. This body, for my governance body, we meet every single week. This is what I do for last at least 5-6 years. We meet every single week. We discuss our challenges we have within the Tableau, either platform or training learning, anything about the Tableau in a company adoption. We talk about the challenges, we identify the approaches, the things to do, and then we implement the approaches very quick. And we go back to see the effect, how the impact is, and we continue improve ourselves. This is a simple 3-step process I try to lay out for you. I mentioned that I've been doing this for the last few years, but how do I know that my governance structure is effective or not? Sometimes I ask myself, I ask my teammates, how do we know we're doing the right thing? How do we know we are doing the things right? Looking back, I look at 2 things to know if we are doing the right things. One is, did we resolve the business pain points or IT platform pain points? Did we resolve the Tableau pain points in the company? That's number 1. Number 2, I look at is, did we encourage the good behaviors of the publishers? I look at those 2 things to know if my governance process is effective or not. Give you 2 examples. I surveyed all the publishers. Okay, I surveyed them. This is survey result of left, that's before, and the right is after. It's about a year apart. Okay, the lower the better. The lower, because it's the pain points. The before survey shows extract delay was everyone's top concern, no doubt. Top concern on the left side. After we have done the 5-6 things I list in my earlier slides for the extracts governance, timeout, usage-based rescheduling and everything. A year later on, I did the same survey again. As you can see, the line dropped dramatically for the extracts. So the pain point was solved. Did we encourage any good behaviors of the publishers? Okay, give you one example that Kevin also mentioned, the publisher data source. Okay, this is the one thing that unfortunately we cannot enforce. This is the only, is good behavior only through education. When people know if I use published data source on the server, one public data source can connect to multiple workbooks. So I can save the extracts. I can make sure all the workbooks have a same refresh schedule. So this only can be done through education. That's a good behavior change. I look at my server, the workbook versus the data source, the percentage. I can tell over time it's getting a lot better. Let me recap, give you a few takeaways, and then we'll have time for your questions. One key takeaway is that governance makes self-service analytics possible. Governance is not to control the access, but enable self-service. That's one takeaway. Second, how to implement the governance, 3 steps. Get a champion, create a governance body in your company, and then PDC your process. It's not a one-time deal, but an ongoing thing. And 4 areas of governance. What things you can focus on? You can list many other things, of course, but I will try to summarize high level. Focus on your data governance. That's what Kevin mentioned about your database access or the public data source permission, the data site. Okay, which job, which role, which user group should access which data. Focus on data. Then focus on the content. That's work. The site structure, the project leader role, the permission will all come into play. Then focus on the server platform healthy, the extracts governance, and the render time governance. Focus on those 4 areas. To prepare this presentation, I just updated my blog site. I have 10 blogs for governance self-service. Those was written a few years back. Just recently, I updated most of them with the latest feature. For example, data governance. I added how you can do better data governance with the latest new feature around data management module and so on. So those blogs gave more details on how actually you set up your governance structure. How do you get started? And how do you measure your maturity of your overall Tableau adoption or overall self-service in your company? I think that's all we have as a presentation. We'll have 10 minutes, Kevin and I, to answer your questions. Start with the questions in the QA area. There are a few of those already. Let's just try to answer those ones one by one.
Yeah, and Mark, there's one more too that's in the answered where I just asked for more context. Or actually, I think I answered that one. That was around default, reduce default timeouts. And the question was whether that would create more errors. And my assumption is that, yes, it would. But what you're doing is taking down what's a pretty high default in terms of the timeout, reducing that down. And yes, you do expect there would be more things failing.
If I can, thank you, Kevin. If I can chime in, I think it's worth to reduce the timeout, even it means a little bit more error, because that is a protection to my server health. For example, with the 3 minutes timeout, you believe it or not, some of out-of-box server admin view on my server get a timeout. I don't see those anymore. But I feel good about it because I feel that my server is more like protected. So what I'm trying to say is it impacts me as well as server admin. That's fair. I think that makes sense, actually. Let's try to answer other questions. What is the default of cache warm-up time? Cache warm-up time default is, okay, I'll go back to my slide. Default is as long as possible, okay? I don't like the default because as long as possible is confusion for me as a server admin. Okay, what is as long as possible? Okay, when I'm asked by a user why I'm getting this, I cannot give them good answer because the default is as long as possible. I have no idea how long the cache had, which is why I recommend changing it to very long hours, specific hours, like 24, or it could be 12 at least. So I know that cache is dropped after whatever time I set. Make sense? I don't like as long as possible. I don't know what it means. Let me see. Andrew's question. Andrew had a question. Did you set up those configurations right away, or did you adjust them tighter over time to get the user? Yeah, very good question. Those configurations are set up step by step based on the situations, actually. If you have not come to a complaint, very big pushback, you set them right away is better. It's better start with some controls, because it's very much harder later on when they get used to certain things, and then you try to take away those things from them. It's very difficult to fight. Okay, even you have a governance body behind you, but it's harder. It's harder even for them to go back to the publisher community to explain. It's better you set tighter control at the beginning, and you can tune as we go. Okay, that's my advice. How there's a niche question. How do we identify CPU percentage used by a dashboard render or extracts when the process recycled? The process recycled, there is a TSM command. You can set. I don't think you can set 6% CPU, 6% of the memory. Your question about CPU. I don't think there is a CPU. First of all, okay. The slide I showed is only memory. I know memory there is. You can set a memory. For the CPU, I don't think there is one. Okay. Although there is a hyper CPU timeout, but the hyper session CPU timeout is very hard to use. I couldn't figure it out how to use it if you talk about CPU. Okay. There is a configuration for hyper session CPU, but it's the way Tableau designed that is very, very, very hard to use. I couldn't figure it out. But the process recycle I'm talking about is memory. There is a memory. And memory is easy to control. Hopefully this answered your question. Okay. Andrew answered these questions already. Mitchell. Is there ever any presentations and the ability to ask questions about running Tableau under Linux? I don't know what special question you have running Tableau on Linux.
He's asked. I think the question there is the question there is looking for like more of a future session, doing something for Linux. Having a forum. I mean, there's some forums out there in the community, but maybe within the VTUG, you might be able to do a topic on Linux deployments.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a lot of very smart people here. If anyone wants to present tips, tricks, how to run Tableau on Linux, please reach back to me, Mark Wu. I'll happy to organize server admin tips, tricks sessions for Linux. Philip, can we easily identify users with consume higher memory? Not easy, but doable. I'm able to identify where you can find them. That's in the Splunk log. That's in the log. I was able to use Splunk log, server log, to identify the workbooks using higher memory. I was able to tell those one time there are about 10 workbooks. Guess what? Each of them they use 80 gig memory. 80 gig memory. That's a lot. Okay, this is where I came up with 5 to 10 gig controls. Okay, I had. Diana, when the extracts came to an error, is it possible that also the administrator get informed by email or only the owner for the data source? Okay, the answer is only the owner get the errors. Admins, I do not want to get emails for a specific extract errors, because otherwise it'd be too many errors. Admins, we can always find out from the admin view on the failure details, how many failed percentage wise. You can actually, from the server admin view, you can drill down, you can find out all of them in the details if you want. Then that's out-of-box server admin view. Philip again, can we, I got this questions answered already. Miguel, where can we see where to put those configurations, especially the ones not documented? I don't know where I can find it. I don't know why Tableau does not document this. You can find it from my presentation. I showed you my presentation earlier. You can find from the previous recording. I think it's September or November presentation. Okay, David, is any easier, simple method to get a user list usage report? I'm hosting a Tableau server on Windows Server VM. Okay, is any easier, simple method to get a user list or usage report? User list, you can have it from server admin view. There's a user. Okay, and then you can see the user login. When was last time login? You can also, what I do is that, of course, I track usage very, very closely. I go to historical event table. Okay, this is where the read-only user of Postgres go to the historical event table. You can track the usage of all the users. You can also track the type of the usage, is extracts or publishing or render or data source, everything. This is something definitely as a server admin, you want to stay on top. Okay. Michael, got questions already. So I realized there is a popular data source that is used the most memory on the dashboard. It took a team to entire year to improve it, but I realized that we simply pushed all the calculations and load to a server. That's not so good. How often do you realistically redesign data source with your Tableau server as a performance and needed to change? I don't know. Sometimes it is now simple. I agree with you. Can take a long time to design data source, do the join. It takes a lot of efforts. I'd also agree with you. But I put a sticker in the ground. I'm very firm on the 2 hours timeout. No matter who comes to me, my manager, my director, I do not easy my control. Sometimes it's hard, but that's the thing we have to play. We have to stay firm. I try to separate the accountabilities. It's up to the data source publishers to design the data source. Okay. As long as I can make a server ready for them to choose whatever schedules they want, but I also give them, I also form on my timeout. If they're able to finish the extracts within an hour, sometimes can go to 1.5 hours, is their job. They have to make the data source join effective enough to finish, basically. Okay. I know there are some challenges sometimes for some data sources, but they have to own it. When I say that, means the self-service publishers, the team. Okay. We are 1 minute behind, but I think we got 2 more questions. Let me try to finish the rest of 2 questions. What are the best way to monitor Tableau server real time? Monitor what? In my server 101 presentation, I talk about the basic things you want to monitor the server: the CPU, the memory, of course, the render time, the extract delays, subscription delays. There are a couple of things you want to monitor. That is in my May presentation. If you go back to the chat, I have a link. or Enterprise Tableau, there's link. In the May presentation, Tableau Server Admin 101, I got details. Alexander, Tableau is selling Service Manager add-on, okay? What value does it provide versus present the way I did for auditing server from, okay. Tableau has data management add-on and also has a server management add-on, okay? The data management add-on is one thing I will recommend, I strongly recommend. The server management add-on, that's your decision. I can only put here. So the 3 minutes behind, I don't know what do we do.
Mark, can I jump in on that one real quick?
Please, I know.
Yeah,
you know.
So server management's a bundle. The performance monitoring, Mark does a lot of his own coding and he shares that coding, so bless him. You can use that. You still have to do some maintenance and things like that. The other thing about server management, it comes with a product called Content Migration Tool. It's an old InterWorks tool that was Power Tools before. It's just one part of it. But if you're moving things across sites, if you're moving things across servers, as you change from one data source to the other, the content migration tool can take a lot of REST API scripting and provide you a lot of automation. So it takes the scripting out of it, provides you with that automation. There's a lot of use cases for it. There's some stale content things you can do as well. Of course, Mark's written his own, but not everybody can write that code like Mark can. And not everybody shares it like Mark. So if you can copy and paste Mark, all the power to you. If not, SM's out there.
Thank you. I don't know, Kevin, at least can you stay a few more minutes? There are a few questions. I think we should
have time.
Try to address that. Okay. Diana, is it possible to send a subscription to an email address that is not a Tableau user? The answer is not possible. Okay. I think it's the security concerns if I do so. Maybe you can do it by yourself with some Python scripts outside Tableau, but I will not do that, go that far, because for me, it's a data security concerns. Okay. Michelle, or Michael, sorry, Michael, fun questions. Michael knows the answer, but I just want to have him here.
That's a great
So
question.
A few of interns here who are the server admins are attending these sessions and graduating this seminar. Based on your extensive experience, what tips will you recommend for new admins on their first day of work? Okay. Oh, I don't know.
I got a good one, Mark. I'll let you think about it. I'll let you stew it. So I would say reach and find out everybody else in the community. Look for people like Paul Benoob. Look for people like Mark Wu. Look for people like Ken Patton and Ben Torgeson and folks that have been around the block. I know I'm missing a bunch. Toby Erkson, the people that are really very, very vocal in the community. If it's your first day, you probably haven't realized what a conference is. If you saw conference-ish, that's not the same. You'll just form that network. That network will be your backbone. It'll get you places. It'll take you to the next place too.
Thank you, Kevin. Why the data certification checkbox available only to a project owner? Actually, technically, it's available to project owner and also project leaders. Why is only available to them? That's a good question. But the thing is that the certification checkbox actually has no feature built around it yet. Okay, no matter you check it or not, really does not matter. I feel that Tableau still struggles, try to make strike in that area. Kevin can correct me if I'm wrong. So certificated data source, for me, it does not have a lot of value, to be honest with you. I have been asking to have a certified workbook feature because the data source mostly is not available to the end users, to the consumers of the dashboard, but workbook dashboard itself, if can be certified. If there is a logo or something on the dashboard, when I see this dashboard is certified, then when I use the data, I can use the data with confidence. I can make my decisions based on the data I see from certified workbook. This is where I think it provides more value, but it's very hard for a product to achieve this feature. I build certified workbook feature, but also turns out it's not being used very popular either. So it's like, I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Chris, I'm experiencing a memory leak in 2019.3 on Linux. Is that your experience? Memory leak happens. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Ken's response there. 2019 to 2020, we made some great improvements in terms of the memory consumption, CPU consumption. There's a couple things that don't recycle anymore, processes that didn't need to restart but were restarting. Certainly make sure you're on one of the latest maintenance releases. If you're in a 2019.3, a lot of it got resolved between .1 and .3. You still might want to check that out with support, have them take a look at your logs. But if you can tell where the memory is coming from, or if you're losing CPU and you can tell where that's coming from, that'll usually be your indicator.
Yeah, Chris, I also strongly recommend that you upgrade. Okay, if you are still using 19.3, that's way behind. I have two servers. One is 2020.3, another one is 2020.1. For the .1, it's going to be .3 very soon. So the version is old. But even you have a newer version, you may still have a memory leak. That's the first situation.
Chris, you're not alone on that, though. Don't let Mark fool you there. There's a lot of people out there on 2019.3 or older, but
yeah,
100% agree that the newer, we fix a lot as we go, and not everything's retroactive.
So, Chris, one more data point. When my server has the memory leak, for a period of time, I have to restart the vSCORE process daily. Although I do have a weekly maintenance where I recycle everything. Weekly, I have a shutdown, a whole server, TSM restart. Okay, that's where I can also do the maintenance. I can do the delete all the temp files. But when that weekly shutdown is not enough due to memory situation, I also have the daily recycle the vSCORE processor. Just take care of that. Emiliano, Mark, have thought to publish a book, a Tableau server hidden golden nuggets. We're thinking about a book, but be honest with you, for the last 2-3 years, I want to do a PDF, put all my things, but I feel that maybe the book is too big, too heavy. So I feel that if I do just a Slack and a blog site, Enterprise Tableau, the small reading piece by piece can be more helpful. I don't know. Okay, I don't know, Emiliano. Maybe you can help me. Thank you. I think we got to the bottom of all the questions. Again, thank you very much for staying here with us. And Kevin, thank you very much. And Alisa as well. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.